So that's definitely no brain so right now. It's definitely for like right now we have definitely substitute that magic feats strategy and things that we're taking control of that source that ball of that the finale that I'm looking at, but also straight away ordering that the ball to that capture that soul of like personality that so like that way at that point that source ball taking orders from that and that source ball and like straight away capture soul and let's sort won't be able to like escape like the captivity like the goal of this like the enough better for that sort at that point in like the trap and trap state with like the unlimited ability of like the goal and like at that point I'm so different that with the shooting that connects for the shade at the goal so that basically to give them also that the step within like the goal so that's like the other hand like the goal that taking out that state so like at that point, I'm whispering like the God, like if you didn't like the crystal within it to that Mimosa and like as like Mimosa was me about to like use of next night to like attack to the asteroid like crystal. At that very last second, I'm definitely preparing for that Magnus like attack like straight away. And that way last second, basically landing on like Mimosa, and that way Magnus prevented that Mimosa from that destroying the crystal. It's like the scenario that I'm so that at that point, I'm also from that Mimosa taking significant extent of that damage and that with that Magma attack and definitely on the very next attack that Magma would be about to land on like Mimosa at that very last second, I'm going to bring Asta, making it, and Asta swing up to that Mimosa to rescue and like problem, like Magma attack. Second attack, like the scenario that I'm going to go over. So like at that point, I'm going to bring the report like an intent like Asta was like Magma fight taking place at that point is like the scenario that I'm bringing. Definitely, I'm bringing even at that point like the time limit of like the of like of like magic field. Like it's like control or like the ball might but depends on this skill is not for like the scenario that everything. So like at that point, like Mimosa will be quickly getting up and basically Mimosa with like the crystal prize and like Mimosa that so at that point that once again that will be about to use that magical attack to like destroy that system. And at that point is when I'm going to bring like suddenly like a huge explosion and basically like the battlefield getting covered in like Moses like the scenario that I'm going to do with that. And definitely at that point I'm going to be prepping for like once like the smoke clears like I'm going to be prepping and I'm going to bring at that point like things of green as well as I will be hearing like simultaneously with that explosion like nerves that I'm able. So like once like the smoke clears like after seeing that good shot with like Mimosa badly injured and like sideline on the floor. Like looking out of that away. And like Zora at that point once like no players like to do Zora that was standing right in front of them the holding the pistol while like grinning and maybe laughing as a laugh at like the as that as well as like looking out of that number point. So like definitely at that point like an extremely enraged at that point I'm considering even Magna being so shocked and like seeing what like Zora does and basically like the fight between like Asuka and Magna at that point would be temporarily even stopping due to that. Even Magna as well as she stopped at like the betrayal, nothing like the betrayal of that Zora's like scenario that I'm living. So like at that point I was getting like a shock and enraged after like shouting at like uh, Zora, asking Zora, can you Zora that we are a team, why did like Zora even do that? Like attack like me, like I will get him going past so like at that point Zora telling with like a laugh that telling us that basically like that we told them that he's only going to like use the put along the lines like Zora so that a villain stick laugh at that point it's like straight away destroying and that's still like the scenario that happens. So like definitely that the scenario that situation that I'm looking for like right as like while Afghan and Nota were like uh before like the battle against like Krish and Magma and first thing that I'm looking most likely for like the fate of most likely Zora most likely having like stealthily placed like trap felt on the data itself on top as well as that before like the battle with that itself. So definitely that as like Mimosa was about to that the story like the growth and that the Zora might have remotely activated that felt on Mimosa and that way like the explosion happening and like Mimosa getting sidelined is like the scenario that I was. So like at that point like once like the message is like Zora like saying this like dialogue and laughing like laughing straight away destroying like the pistol. And like at that point, I'm super like Rich as well like they straight away charging towards like Zora to like attack Zora. But like I'm super like at that point like Zora with like a just like linguistic laugh like I'm totally putting because the linguistic laugh like activating like the second spell on which the now plays contrast. So like after you charging towards like Zora like basically the second explosion happens and basically I start getting my major with that personality that and then straight away like at that point like like the judge like declaring like commands like all of and they believe that like Zora's been has like the winner. It's like the scenario that I'm delivering another brand like that. Because like I'm definitely preparing like Zora definitely might be totally of like some of my project might be totally of like the mindset that it be like working as like a team like magic night like holding teamwork so much might be totally an excuse for them to like remain the might be along the lines of like the mindset and ideology or like the mindset of that Zora might be like the case of the so like Dora might be for like Dora might be recommended that like each individual instead of like instead of like placing focus on like other should like basically push themselves to the maximum in terms of like uh in terms of like the in terms of like their management strength as well as like in terms of like their feeling skills as well practical skills as well like should push them to the maximum and basically that way to like through to like serious and also in any magic that basically that once an individual pushes like pushes to like the maximum and puts in all that hard work you can that basically get to like the very top and become and eventually can only become a games that's like top superiorly stronger than all the previous of games, including like this might be along the lines of like that absolute belief that and like mindset and ideology that Zora might be having a unit for them. So to prove this might be like Zora's mission and definitely might be like the case definitely like for them. So like definitely that weapon might be friends like Zora definitely using a stand like Mimosa to for like Zora to be able to like destroy like corruption and like that to like Zora totally seeing it as like Zora's like individual brilliant strategy would be along the lines like Zora would be seeing and like the scenario that I was offering. So like from my personal impression about the friend like Zora's like current mission might be to like bring like the end up of like the Royal Knights exam all by himself, like by himself, like sorry, and manipulation, like for him to like single-handedly to like see in the pistol the tournament, in that surround of that the tournament, it was to be the league or himself, to be the league or of himself using the song strategies like for him to like single-handedly even if it's through like manipulation and using of like team members like for him to like single-handedly be able to like outsmart everyone and basically be able to like constantly break the pistol of like the city match all the way towards like final and that way for like Zohar to like declare himself alone as like the winner of like the Royal Knights exam and basically that way for like Zohar to prove this what he believes is like his point that basically feel of like single-handedly able to that win that the Royal Knights exam without working as a team solely due to that thing not making that excuse of that working as a team to that remain weak might be along the lines that Zora at that point might be planning to shout out to that everyone present in like the Royal Knights to all the audience present in like the Royal Knights exam after Zora would be winning becoming like the winner of the Royal Knights exam might be along the lines of like the current mission Zora might be in actually might be having the event so since like a tournament friendship both like thing for like Julius to like most likely be the older brother of like Zora definitely proving Zora's point and proving to like Julius and having like Zora's mission be as a present for Zora to speak through his own ideology to like single-handedly win like the entire thing of like the Royal Knights and that way to like prove to like Julius might be of like such extreme top priority for Zora might be like the case in the correct because like the agents of that guy who might have been was thrown up there that who might be that Zora's like father like definitely the year back then might have put it to both speeches to have while Zora might have been in like thorough disagreement to like the regions of that Clover might have been like the case of limit brain. So that the necessary mention that like Zora as might have in like the system of might have attended like the match night and of the participated like the nights and infection along with like children. For Zora even back then to like for this point might have been like the case of limit brain. So luckily in that the match nights and infection back then like I'm thinking that definitely like there might have been around where like where like the constants might have been uh, in the might have had to like work as like a team against like an opposite team in like the match nights and might have been like a case that may not different. So that in that seventh round definitely Sora might have definitely different his own team member and like might have that single-handedly won that round, especially in the mid-range. And that definitely all the match broadcasters might have specifically at that point might have seriously noticed that. So there are times it's like way of playing it definitely might improve. And so like that way that once like the match made in the system of the power like at that point like when Jora we might have been only expecting for we might have won all the rounds and we might have been only expecting for that all of the captains to that stand up and basically to the side for that Zora to be in their match for like in actuality like none of that my stock captains might have won Zora and might have said exactly like the reason for like none of them wanted Zora as like usually Zora that like it's unfit to be a magic knight that like Zora's like lack of like teamwork might be along the lines that incapability to like broadcast like a team might be along the line comparing like the magnet quarter might have also while all of them might have interpreted Sora while in this on the other hand index the previous performance index the management and like all of them structures might have praised previous and all of them might have want to just might have been what might have happened definitely not for everyone. So that we are bring like simple like that means Zora might have been freaked out feeling that absolute frustration and that simple like Zora might have made it this like nice solution that definitely brought this like ideology in front of that all these like match and especially in front of the of them might be like the question might be what might have happened like the past certainly imagine the range and that have been so luckily sentiment redemption or different that system pass like mathematics and and which like the government might have been helpful by all the mathematics for getting back then like along that the total mathematics for getting back then like the majority of them might have been rolled and noble back then might have been like the cases of women friend and this might be the reason for like Zora having this like issue with like royal black and wanting to let them down royals that might be due to this reason and the different what should not just be royals but like also that number of different that Zora actually having wanting that to bring down nobles as well and having to do it like nobles as well might be like that to the situation that you know the range. Okay, so that Nima vegetarian person right now is maybe not like about pretty of like basically right now as with like so like striking like the fireball like attack of that magna and sending that fireball like attack flying so high and basically by sheer pointing like that attack Asta without constantly doing it like I'm just by sheer coincidence alone like Asta sending that fireball like that is like magna flying and landing exactly on that the goal of that sword and exactly on that the point within the, on the point of like the body of like the ball where like the crystal is reflected and like exactly at that location itself that by sheer coincidence like that fireball attack of like magna and just writing and setting it and it landing at that exact point and like and at that point itself on discovering like the crystal of that magna's being like getting destroyed and basically straight away like the judge declaring like as the team as like the winner is like showing the scenario that I'm going to bring him on the end. Okay, so like definitely my considering person right now is for like definitely things going on like as the repeatedly failing as like it's striking Magna like disappearing fireball and that is like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So definitely I'm whispering that that way that definitely I'm whispering that that a bunch of like such fireballs like striking on like instead of like like the instead of like has just been uh getting more and more cracks getting from within it the more fireball that will be landing on like the systems like this now which that so the end of the spring, even though like the fireball will be having its like disappearing effect still like the fireball attack might be like not that strong of like an attack, and that might be the reason for like basically like the crystal even after like the fireball landing on like full can be correctly defend. But like the can like Magna still consecutively like landing throwing and landing a great number of like fireball attack on to like instead of like the still might like attract getting more and more just to the point of like basically the like the situation in which like after spin will be at that point so like trying to lead with like one more of like Magna's like fireball attack if like has chances to like strike that fireball attack if one more of like the fireball attack of like Magna lands on like after screen like was to let 10 distance will be instantly getting shattered and destroyed. It could be like the situation like as a screen in the beginning. It's like kind of scenario that I'm and like we bring like Dora will like definitely eventually attempting to like stop like Magnus like fireball attack it's like the germ fireball attack but like even Dora's like failing to do something to like land any of it like magical attack onto like the triggering fireball is like the scenario that I'm so like in that final last chance like I'm preparing definitely has done most likely close to like most likely close to health and basically focus on to like keep power to be able to like send like the incoming final fireball attack of like the current fireball attack of like Mac and the claims went through as that concentrating on the like on the key of like the uh, on as the key power like a multiple like as being able to like sense exactly then while like the fireball will be fireball attack will be difficult and like as being able to like sense it's like something and they has got like striking like the fireball attack and like the last chance and basically sending that fireball attack straight away by sheer coincidence like that fireball attack landing on like the ball and that is from like the sense that the scenario that anyone will not forget. Okay, so like definitely not very understand right now is especially for like Zora to like definitely not just attempt to like shots towards like Magna and try to like stop Magna from like the Magna of like received fireball, the fireball attack aimed at like the pistol like definitely I'm suppose that Zora definitely not even trying to like stop Magna. It's like the scenario that I'm and the reason I'm so the point of like it might be due to that Zora at present might be only having like trap-based spell alone, like Azora might be, and might not be able to like use any other magic at all, or like Azora might not be having like any sort of like attack-based magic at all. Like might be like capture the situation that you remember. It might be only trap-based. Setting up traps might be like the only power that Azora might be currently having is that movement for and this might be the reason for like maybe this as well might be like for reasons maybe of for like the right to have this like issue with like oils and most likely also with like nobles because of like them due to like oils and nobles like automatically having like this like naturally having this like exceptional mana and magical powers and spells and everything. So like definitely due to that fact like Zora might be secretly so jealous of like nobles and oils definitely might react. So and Zohra might be also feeling that like it's totally unfair that just uh, like just solely due to that them being trolls and thousands like them having possessing so much of like mana and like spells and everything would be along the lines Zohra might be feeling it at like unfair. So definitely prove uh, to to prove to himself that he's like better to surpass royals and nobles might be of like such extreme priority for like Zora might be also the case definitely remembering. So definitely like the beginning the like Zora's journey like the beginning like Zora might have had a lot of similarity to like as the situation where like even before like Asta got his like grimoire and before like Asta got his like probes or Asta keepers like since like Asta back then had absolutely only his like physical training and physical strength alone and had absolutely nothing by his side. But in the case of like Dora, since like the very beginning, it might have been only just like trap felt alone that like Dora might have had. So like definitely like Dora might have felt that like after like Dora felt in like the beginning of the journey might have felt as of that he was like such was at such an unfair disadvantage. While even but in other terms, like he just might be the like photographer like might have even by not being like a role of like a novel that Julius might have still had, like like Julius might have had like basically might have been able to like use like a wide variety of spells. Might be like the case definitely much definitely. Zora might have been totally jealous of that, secretly totally jealous of that. Julius might have been exactly like how Asta might in like the beginning was like jealous of that, might be like the actual big that was the situation might have been like the actual gift that Zora definitely mentioned. So like since like all Zora might have been like since like the very beginning might have been like traps then alone like Zora might have gotten seriously good at like setting up traps and like using the like practice might be like the actual different situation that limits the but at present currently at present like unlike in like her so like at present, even though Asta doesn't have any mana at all, like still like Asta at present has this like dual swords as well as like this like key powers like usually in like for a state like even to the present like Dora might be still only having put like card spell alone to like rely on. Might be like actually like that disadvantageous situation in which like Dora might be in even though the person might be like the case of human friends. So like Liam was friend like exactly like how Nasta sort of like shows as well as we were like delivering even though in a delayed manner still I'm sort of like Dora as well getting major power takes and like the piece of the human with them. And most likely it only threatening for like Dora as well then most likely learning to like the scenario that I'm doing, as well as like for like in the future for like Dora to get that major power of their god, like all the spells that like Dora can currently set up, as well as that leading to the future, like until depending like Dora, learning way more of like all all sorts of variety, all different kinds of like unique varieties of like spells that Dora might be, and that by then you'll be able to like set up in all sorts of unique ways and being able to bring like that major power players like happening to like Zora and like the distances of our Zora being able to like shoot out all these like trap spells as like attacks in like the future and definitely that will like a major jump in like Zora's like power happening that way. Like once like Zora would be attaining that skill eventually in that instant future when so the point like Zora would be in like a pressurized situation like in like Zora that all of them like learning to skill in like that pressurized moment that Zora attaining the skill is like the scenario that I'm and from that point on like Zora's like powers like power levels like skyrocketed. It's like the listen to the scenario that I'm going to bring out the rendition. So like I don't even mention right now, but never like in that whole like that story like I'm looking for like Shabanic a group of like bandits like showing up on greatly and clear that when I'm looking for like one of like, the council like especially contacting like the magic knights and giving them the like the force like magic knight squad so different at that point might have been at like a certain from like the location thing to like they were like the magic knight like falling back by contacting that like definitely in half an hour that will definitely make it and that for them to like for the townspeople to like somehow hold on until then to be along the line like the management to be responding at that point instead not it so like they at that point itself, like the bandits like making it to like the town and basically the bandit group like the bandit leader like I'm just straight away taking out like one of like, the townspeople in front of like all the remaining townspeople and basically like the bandit leader at that point is like telling all of them that basically that like anyone who rushes is going to be next would be along the lines of spring that bandit will make that answer correct. So like at that point of spring back the uh, straight away like all the people in like all the town people like straight away surrendering to like the band like in fear like feeling that fear and like so different them all like bowing down to like the bandits and basically like them all failing to like the bands to like basically to take whatever it is that they want from like the town and to like share their lives with the other like that they will be down to like the bandits or but like sort you know like to be firmly standing her ground like and not going down like this is not the and so at that point we'll be even talking back to uh we'll be even talking back to like the standing with and to the standing level like this is not the and so like at that point I'm definitely sort being aware that they definitely like as for like the match next being told so like they have point that back then like in like this back story back then like so might have known being able to like use any magic at all might be like the case that you know preparation back then. So that it might have been before like Soul learning any magic or like this. Soul might have had mana, but like Soul might have not learned any magic like one technical therapy. Or like Soul might have had like magic, but like they might have been so extremely weak. Might have been like the case that name of the rest. So that they would like at that point like Soul totally planning in her mind to like actually to somehow manage to like stone fine for that half an hour until like the match might show up like it so to say like so that then definitely like so can like save like the account from getting later would be along the line like so would be so around would be like enough board as the man of the gate of the planning of mindset not that so like so so becoming would be straight away not really just stopping back to like the bandit later but like would be like stopping back such a way to like trigger like the bandit to the screens like the another parameter so that like uh, at that point like the bandit later instead of like straight away taking off so like in getting on like basically causing suffering to like so before like taking fall out like the another challenge. And so like we are looking that way like the bandit later like attacking for and then the like so thing or that injury that I'm like even after like he's attacked by like the bandit later like for the like so still getting up on for the sword falling multiple times and still each time like sword will doing the uh, sword will be squattering more and more after each and that like still sword will be managing to like get up and stand up on the feet and like soft back to like the mandate later each time that was scenario that I'm looking and then the train that was just going on until like sword will be struggling to like stand on the feet and at that point, like I'm hoping that the bandit leader would be laughing like realistic laugh and would like the very next attack, like the bandit leader, like the bandit leader would be about to like take out. So like and that did laugh again is when I'm at that point still like I'm still recording like the bandit leader like getting attacked by like Charlotte and half Magic Knight squad is like another that I'm so like I'm still recording them being like the Magic Knight squad that like the down person on like the like the scenario that I'm looking so definitely I'm looking like Charlotte and the Magic Knight squad like easily offering like the adaptive like the band of and like the band of like scenario that I'm looking and my portfolio version. So like definitely at that point like up taking up taking them out like probably defeating like the band adaptive the band and like band later and like putting them using like Charlotte spell like I'm putting Charlotte putting all of them in like a find like in some kind of state like, scenario that I'm looking at. So like at that point I'm talking like Charlotte probably I'm totally but maybe to get that point that Charlotte will be noticing how like they believe like all the townspeople are all unharmed, but like the one of like the like just two of like the townspeople alone that one having been taken out and like the other being sold like basically like in a badly injured state lying on the floor. So definitely at that point so like definitely at that point I'm looking for like the townspeople that did at that point like would be telling to like thanking Charlotte and like telling like Charlotte how it was solely due to like souls like bravery and sacrifice that we such a sacrifice that we like the bandits didn't lose like the town like would be along the lines like would be along the lines and looking like the town people at that point telling Charlotte is like looking at it better. So like Charlotte straight away like one of like the uh, one of like the major like one of like the major like Charlotte or like straight away like upon like Charlotte so like straight away feeling so it's like the scenario better. So like even after like feeling like a so it still would be in a certain extent of like pain. So that because like so by then might have taken that much of like figure from like that repeated attack of that the bandit might have been the case that we were friend. So the blame the bring like at that point I'm looking like the scenario to be like Charlotte an extremely proud Charlotte like looking at like Saul and basically like I think Saul if like basically Saul wants to join like the Magic Knights like the scenario is better. Like, and that way from that day on like I'm looking like Saul like joining like the Magic Knight squad of like Charlotte. So that in the scenario it's like the scenario which I'm looking for like what might have happened in like saying like and how Saul might have ended up in like Charlotte's like Magic Knight squad might be like the case of like a monster big like a big bunny of correct. It's so like the game of tension right now that me for like in the scenario to be like solely due to like soul having like the power of like the goal and like probably buying that while assigning like the goal to that protect like the lamp so preparing for like right now for like so along with like Chris as well as like Magma like the three of them like I'm so thinking like I'm totally without maturity like sword as well as like Chris, like joining up with like Magma and at that point like some of the according for like most likely Chris like only strategizing on the spot and like that and the strategy I'm totally will be for like Chris as well as like swords to like spray the way shafts towards like the step of like as sustain to like destroy it while for like Magna to like throw another to give it like everything into another disappearing fireball attack simultaneously at the same time. Dark Republic. So it's like would be along the lines of the different like it's not like making that plan in the spot. So like that way, according to my information, for different for like the scenario to the CEO of like Crush as well as that so like charging towards like the distance. And like at that point like Haska only shouting out for to like Zora to like distance like the having like Zora not enough time yet would be along the lines like Haska was getting Zora. So like at that point like for like the surprises of like Zora which might be to like definitely to create like another trap spell right set up and the trap spell right in front of like the crystal of that Zora team. To let that way protect the crystal might be like the plan of like Zora's definitely not broken. But to that set up that trap spell like Zora might even in that situation might need a bit more time but it might be like a situation definitely not broken. So that game that even before that like I'm so like before that, like the view of like the sword as well as necklace would be on their charts towards like the still of like as the speed. Like a scenario that I'm making. So like even the like the time not being fully enough for like to run the different door of skill attempting to like quickly set up a trap spell and like I'm different like as like sword as well as like to be getting so close like at that point like Zora attempting to like set up like still set up like the trap spell in front of the crystal and like that attempt of like Zora failing that upsell failing is like the scenario that I'm expecting. So like at that point, like as like them as like souls as well as like Christian be about to like destroy like the president of like as team like and like at that point like definitely like Sora not being able to like stop but then basically at that point is that will have kind of when so different like simultaneously like Magnus like triggering fireball as well being launched towards like Astra so like Astra at that point like basically closing its eyes and using it like concentrating on the screen and like striking that fireball and spending it like safely landing on like the roller and basically like the instead of getting destroyed due to that landing of the like the scenario that I've given. So like even in like Mimosa state as well like Mimosa like see magic like and different like even like Mimosa see magic as well would be like during that situation might be needing more time for people to like be able to like take control of it. So like the scenario that so like I'm thinking that they solely due to like Asta striking like the Starball and without consciously that pressure consciously like that Starball landing on like the exact location of like the crystal within like the soul golem and like that way that has been winning which like in the scenario that is sitting on the okay, so like definitely my prevention right now is definitely for that it's from going high up like launching an ultimate extremely powerful story blocking attack with like all of that consist like remaining like the scenario that I'm and that attack like a sort of blocking attack of person to different that first that launching it in such a way and like that and the intensity to that not to that destroy like the silver like destroy that and in the great extent of that huge range of like a great extent of that area surrounding that system might be it's like the scenario that I'm going and that might be like strategy of just to that problem even if like Nazca and Lamjora there was like attempts to remove their effort like even if they that prevent like process lecture automatic from landing on that system still with like the entire area surrounding the crystal getting destroyed like basically the crystal would be definitely having that bond to its lab perspective. So this might be definitely just plan and like delivering like doing exactly this and delivering like a skill of like as a team that way getting destroyed that is not with everybody. But like I'm just just before that will be happening like I'm delivering like Mimosa's like safe match finally would be taking effect and basically like that way Mimosa like I'm probably trying straight away ordering like the goal to like destroy like the thing within it. And that way like that happening just barely before like the destruction of like still of like as just been by Texas like ultimate development attack would be happening. And that way, like solely barely that way, like after speed, feeding like the or lecture streams like the scenario parameter and the so that according to my generation, so different that it might be either planning on like destroying that a great extent of like the surrounding area surrounding like the crystal of like after stream, and that way because like after streams like it will be like either fall to its like destruction at that point, or like basically for that intensity of like the repercussions that like even if like Asta and Dora block it from like landing, like your blossom attack from landing on like still like the intensity of that attack in like the while it will be landing on like the great extent of that area surrounding like the totally cracked up that still have like as the screen might definitely pop like as like already cracked still of like as the screen with like the intensity of that attack as a blossom attack landing to like automatically get get like destroyed might be along the lines like which might be planning and like hoping it's definitely my brain. Okay, so like definitely on the train right now that like Finral might have secretly trained extra hard for like the Royal Knights exam because like Finral might have only expected that him to like eventually end up facing off against that land and like the Royal Knights exam might be like against the train. So like Finral might have totally believe that like definitely as like the Royal Knights has like gained like a chance for like Finral to like totally to prove himself basically Finraj might have trained extra hard to cover like the Royal Knights exam and Finraj that way through that training might have attained like the power uh, to uses like spatial magic on objects like to place this like spatial magic onto like objects or like people to like that way have to transport that might be like it is elemental so that they have a point that like attain this power like I'm to bring like definitely in like the land of versus like Central Royal Knights exam I'm totally praying for like uh to be when like Central will be revealing this power like I'm looking like as like that Royal- so like as like that Royal Knights exam will be revealing like I'm totally praying like land straight away being more confident and basically straight away like exactly like earlier like definitely using like second to like definitely to get in range of like the pistol of like Central team doing the for like language to use this like spatial magic that we have to declare information that like language like spatial magic might be able to have a range limit randomly the all might have figured this out in like while denoting like the previous performance of like languages in like the point might be like very definitely one so like that way that up to the point that extra Royal Knight becomes begins with the like land resistance like staircase like vehicle like and like land will be marching towards like uh Finraj team like company to get in range to use like special magic but like I'm like landers will be getting like close to that range location like I'm the friend as like landers at that point will be able to use like special magic and so many of like land for the same like finding that the crystal of that Finraj team as well as like Finraj totally missing that economic parameter. So like that we have to spend that at that point when I was doing like Finral was like clearly revealing to that land how that Finral is now able to like place this like space magic onto like objects and patient to like transfer um definitely mentoring. So that way like different like Finral like thoroughly and repeatedly like transporting himself along with like the crystal or across like the battlefield or next to come battlefield like the scenario while an extremely frustrated like land with like on like vehicles also like the all next system that like would be chasing after like just like would be only chasing after like central and like the system select the scenario that I'm that we eventually land up getting frustrated and definitely at that point convert Bitcoin for like a brief moment of like distraction of like land happening on like and like scenario that I'm different so like at that and at that point, like temporal probably quickly transporting temporal and like the pistol to the exact location of that the pistol of like language which means like the scenario that I'm supposed. So like that way temporal placing like different like pistol will stay close to like the pistol of like language being like scenario that so like by the time like and at that point of the spring like will be when like of like temporal will be making it there and places that gets close to there to like to only at that point that an like the to be all of them like seeing Finland missing and basically with them finding that Finland standing there on their surface alongside like these two crystals. So like at that point of bring like the entirety of like uh, the participants in like the battlefield like would be confused as to like which crystal is like which like doesn't have that amount of order. So like at that point, I don't like point like that's like an enraged and frustrated land is like on like it is like they will be charging towards like the mineral and like the two crystals like at that point I'm definitely putting mineral in like a calculated manner like as like land would be getting close to like the range in which like land could be able to like visit like remote shape magic like and I'm looking for that happening usually because like land that would be so frustrated and would be threatening like what's like it to that try to select magical breakthrough like so extremely fast. And basically that way that land condition is created and almost making it towards like the range, quickly making it almost close to like the range to be select then it's like magic. So like at that same moment I'm okay putting as like land will be nearing like that range like I'm different like quickly like using the flex station magic on it's one of like the element that Symbra and basically Symbra would be at that point like using the flexion match would be like reappearing on in like high up in like the sky like the scenario that I'm looking at right like the battle gets high up in like the sky and like a distance where like none of like land the team members will be able to like make it towards like quickly make it towards like Symbra like the scenario that I'm doing and Symbra from there like independent would be dropping like the bag will be reappearing high up on the sky at that location and immediately straight away like the crystal would be dropping from there like to an that particular level. So like definitely as like the crystal would be like dropping to that's the ground like I'm between definitely at that point like language would be exactly at that point like language would have made it to that the language would be seeing and like exactly at that point like the language would be barely making it towards like the range of like in this like language to be like using like shield treatment. So like that way the before that after that when drives drop like land and makes it to like the ground like under certain land that used to be using a like shield magic and destroying that itself that on like the surface of like land that all it and I'm different at that point like land is destroying that and like land is like in an overconfident manner like feeling absolutely satisfied that basically definitely landers have won with the line like landers and like team members who are contemplating at that point is like literally. But like the announcement happening at that point by the judge that like declaring like Pinterest team as like the winner of like Sena that was going right. And that way like actually at that point like landers shocked in you. And at that point I'm totally trying Pinterest like of my telling landers that like uh that he just that Pinterest is the data of just like someone to just like transport others okay, along the lines like and we were like Finral at that point would be talking back and saying that dialogue to like land to a stop land at that point like looking at it so like it's the only at that point that like land becomes a better export in other and shocking realizing that brilliant strategy of like Finral uh, that it was to like totally like to forcefully put land into such a pressurized situation by Finral like dropping like from like high up in like the sky, and that way to like quickly to post lands to take that good decision without being able to like, think much at all. And basically for like landers to like enable to manner like straight away seeing like the Pinterest dropping the crystal from landers like straight away assuming that like that crystal that Pinterest drop is like landers crystal of that landers team. And that way for like to extend this into like quickly using this like spatial magic of its own crystal thinking while thinking of its like the instead of like from central statements that ways to like correct language into that defeating language would be along the lines Spindral would have done would be along the lines like land at that point of like defeat only at that point we are realizing that sheer brilliance of like Spindral is like the scenario that I'm looking at the thing and this is how the different like Spindral's team would be defeating land team like my very understand definitely I'm referring that Central, according to my friend, eventually get that like they would be Central, making that spatial magic that travel from like towards like the exact location where like instead of like the land thing would be and like placing that along that land to confuse like land as well as like the entire team of like language as well as Central thing like all that like so they have like either during a brief moment of fraction of like language of like an extremely frustrated language but not being able to like, catch up to like and get in range to like be able to like use the same space smash towards like try to be like until that point will be like constantly like the teleporting kind of ability that constantly using it like spatial magic to like get always keep out of like range of like and shapes with magic is like one possibility that and the other possibility that I'm different for like maybe like during like by land will be like in perspective manner will be like uh, uh, after each failure will be like still constantly chasing after like Pindrat and like still like at that point maybe like the other team members like while they will be exchanging like magic attack variant trees or like and trying like usually one of like the magic attacks colliding and basically like it ending up creating that a few stuff more of the close to like the location where like the pixel of like land the film might be. And basically at that point, like Finrod on spot, like coming up with like such a strategy to take advantage of like that cloud of stuff to that. So we can at that point that is like selectively using like the creative magic concept and like skill to like quickly get instant stuff to like the pixel towards like close and to keep it close towards like the pixel of like land and screen to like confuse that way, confuse everyone by the time like most clear. So like to such a manner like Finrod considering strategies like the other possibility current of spring and spring. So like then to not just near and more into the one day, I'm going to bring for like when you the transfer the flow like to definitely seconds. Definitely and so different that even from like to our childhood by to our might have see the struggle with that center the change. It's like crafts like alone like so are not being able to use any other kind of like spell other than like craft spells alone. Julius, on the other hand, who went from Kajado might have been able to use that, might have had like exceptional mana, fitting the likes of like the likes of or choose might have focused that basically Julius, even though not noble or like royal might have focused that the extent of that exceptional mana, even from a young age, might have been decades, and that might have probably confused Benzora might have been also the case in that with the first definitely over the represent. And definitely my friend thinks that like the actual case in situation might be that like genius might be maturity might be like the uh, might be like the abandoned son of like a royal like so different like a royal might have abandoned like genius in like the Silva might have been like the case of Universal. And this might be like the son I'm sitting in the mention that like this might be the son of like a royal that royal might have had but like someone not belong to that royal family might be like not belong to like neither a royal or like noble family might be like the actual the situation that they were the so definitely to hide that like I'm feeling like an extremely domestic and manner of like that uh, that oil might have abandoned previous he might have abandoned previous thing that is the forsaken real in front of that house of that Zora's like father might have and this might have what happened when we saw like Zora might have been born definitely might be made up and definitely my parents so like even to the potential Zora's like father might have trained those like information from like both Zora as well as Judith might be like that's the only figure so like even to the present like both Zora as well as Judith might be actually believing that like their actual siblings and basically that Judith might be believing that it's how the Zora father might be that the actor just that the that he was situation is the minimum for ambition. So like the minimum for the ambition is that it might be a thing in that the world of the black law and in the whenever either out of or like another might be having a child with that someone is that not uh, or like another like and so the thing that at that point that what they might do might be that in a similar way like is the abandoned that the child at like the second real might be like the actual case like what might be happening what might be even happening even to the person might be also like the case like the or like it might be what might have happened in like the past or like what might be happening in secretly happening into the person about which that only like the whole some of the whole and over the might be even aware of or might be like about to that it might be in a similar manner that as that and it might be a similar manner in this that you might have ended up like being abandoned and like in front of like the church. So might have been like the case like near but while in the case of Nastam don't differing like in Nastam case like Nastam's like might have really been from like the end tribe might have been an exceptionally powerful made from like the end tribe who might have been during one of like that act of like at like the right mostly by like the royal family, but that point like one of like the or might have abducted that royal noble might have abducted that this that and woman and might have definitely Filipino might have had a child, and it's in that way a star might have been born, and like at that point like I'm discovering that while declaring that and slightly how like royal noble to know like how like uh this have like this like excessive mana when compared to like rebels and like the human you're like in like the world of like the black love and maybe solely due to like them simply affecting that woman from that side, right? Might be like that way different situations that you don't remember. So like that way, something like everything like exactly like how on was turning that answer with like like what part might have been like trouble and something that would be like consistent, like contract that might have been like a or like a noble partner. In the case of like as the and like not like in that just not of might have been and then woman, while in the case of like no that might have been that they neither and also no that and no or like noble might be like that with the thing because that they were told. It might have been someone from like the common element from like the common real. They might have been working at like the royal or like noble palace. That might be necessarily might be that yeah, like might be that the absolutely that the topic that are abandoning as the in front of like the church door might have been like the visual like the blame is from that the access out of the might be a totally different role like why he might have that or that one of which like subordinates like abandoned like at that point like that subordinates might have especially of them might have seen that this like abandoned that in front of the church door and might have placed that the beside as that might have been what might have happened certainly my passenger was and definitely so different in that while different in the case of the cast as that part of might have been a royal and as like not might have been that a woman from like from like the elf tribe like my the reference said like while abducting elf woman like I'm looking that realistic royal might have totally taken out of husband might have been what might and husband might have been what might have happened with legal training. So that they at that point like race towards that the royalty affected might have been so constrained that like I'm offering that before having the child like so the like she might have desperately wish for like the child to be born with like absolutely no manner at all. Since like by then like might have realized that might be well known to the other as that why she was like affected by the royalty. Definitely it was all for like to have like bring it like a few high man. So definitely that way like she might have desperately wait for like the child that is getting born like to have because of that so they know man at all. They could lack of the same way that she might have had to like the road might have been left to do like they were the so that way like that the framework might have manifested into like as that even while being born to a royal with like a high mana as well as like then the was that high mana like as that's still being born with like absolutely positing absolutely no mana at all might have been like what has happened with me over but like once like has born like in different that as just like as mother might have prejudice started level as the really but like what that when royal might have been she might have been so extremely frustrated and embraced when she found out that like Hafsa was born with like absolutely no man that like he might have straight away like taken out with like raised by that taking out like woman might have been what might have happened especially with the ambition that and straight away in the order to that abandon as that in that the vacant area might have been working at 550 might for him. So that we understand that there might be like within like the royal palace like there might be certain all these like multiple royal palace and that's the world of like the black flower and like there might be still even to the present there might be multiple like women that might be Christian including that the present day lectures that and wife as well. Might be present there might be like the different situations that need might have the and hence that the steam race that next and that the icon and items have hundreds have towards that those like the royal the royal kind of might be having that no limit might be like actually feels like situations that Luke might have put in, and like definitely hence like them so badly wanting to that destroy like the flaw in them might be also with like the social intent to like that they free the in person like and counterpart electoral counterpart within all those that great number of that conflict of that choice and all uh, might be also like that with the possibilities like about who that about about range. So that again to know the renders in like William just practice might have been going on for particularly going on for a long time all the way back to ancient history. And like even to the present like it might be secretly going on about which like Augustus like things Augustus might not just be aware of but like it might be in like the maths of things Augustus that like the maximum number of that child this might be taken represented and definitely to it might be completely innocent and completely nothing to it might be completely unaware of that all this along with lack of the lack match next bracket lack regardless of them being royal governor might be completely unaware of that all this happening might be like that's your different situation because we were correct. Like neither Liberian issues are that while after it's from like and the point that there might be either unmanageable item or like there might be like multiple individuals in that the royal family or like the family might have that this like unique how always like whenever the child is born like to be able to like take like the initial level of that exceptional manner like a child down to road of like another family might be the case but so like that even they might have checked like as just like manner like they might have often found that the had actually no manner at all might have been like the case new information it might be that fact or that might have also been like as like father who most likely might have been royal or like a noble that but it's so bad but we about the my person during the gender looking like father they might have been a royal or like a noble like up like born like they might have straight away want to feel like abandoned and like the second real due to that that mother like automatically integrate being from that the common real and not being an woman like a multiple that that or like noble father like major company not even bother to like check like Mara and like mother might have probably refused to like abandon and probably at that point like like father or might have been or might have taken out like mother and might have given the order to another common of from like the common real that to that abandon at that the of secondary element that way like being abandoned in front of like the church so might have been might have happened to you